All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Health and Wellness Business Leadership Series. Today, I'm so excited to be featuring Linda Downey, who is the founder of the Organic Health Journey. Welcome, Linda.
Hi, thanks, Kristen. Thanks for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Likewise. So, really excited about our topic today. It's a topic that's also very near and dear to me. We're going to be talking about how gut health is connected to fatigue and even thyroid health, which I think is a topic that not enough people are talking about. So, I'm super excited to dive in with you on that today.
Yeah. You're right. I have had thyroid issues and something I always keep my eye on, but I did not recognize for many years the relationship. I wish I knew 30 years ago what I know now. Would have been a really different life.
Yeah,
We're connected.
I'm sure with a lot of people. So hopefully we'll save some people from going down the path that, you and I and a lot of other people have gone through a little bit too late.
Yep.
So what initially got you into fatigue and gut health? Because I know it's a big focus inside your practice. So talk to us a little bit about that.
Yeah, it's really my life is what did it, which I think is a similar story for you and probably a lot of practitioners in our space. You know, we have these life events and these experiences, and then all of a sudden for me it was like, wait a minute, if this is happening to me, this is happening to a lot of other people. So I'll share my story a little bit with you. So I have a master's in exercise physiology. I was a personal trainer, fitness person into wellness and health. I'm 55. So that's 30 years ago, 5 years ago even, when I was 20 and getting out of school. And I got ulcerative colitis in my early 20s.
Mm-hmm.
And now I know from just my training that just growing up in an alcoholic family, my mom died when I was 4, excuse me, and then I had Epstein-Barr in high school. So there's a lot of things that now I know connect. But there I was in my early 20s as a fitness person, got treated for ulcerative colitis with medications, spent probably a year and a half of really struggling with like my gut. And then that sort of balanced out, but it balanced out in a way that I just didn't talk about it anymore, but it wasn't good. Like I always was bloated or didn't feel well, or after I pooped, it hurt, but I just thought, okay, that's how it is,
Right.
And so I'm here doing this personal training, and I started to be the tiredest personal trainer you could meet. And then the tiredest and the fattest personal trainer you could meet. Because what happened was my thyroid got affected. And so in my late 20s, I guess, into my early 30s, that was my first experience with thyroid. And I had Graves' disease then. I was diagnosed with Graves' disease, spent another year with an endocrinologist working on my thyroid, prescriptions for thyroid and heart, because Graves makes your heart race. And then she said, your thyroid has balanced out and it looks like it's good, but I didn't feel good. Like I didn't feel vital. I didn't have energy. I had gotten Lyme disease around 26 years old. So,
oh my goodness.
Right. So just throw that on the pile.
Yeah, why not?
Right. And I was on antibiotics, 6 weeks of heavy duty antibiotics for the Lymes.
Wow.
Anyway, so she's like, nope, your thyroid's good. Like your numbers are good. I got married and got pregnant. Your numbers are good. They watch your thyroid, with pregnancy. But I just didn't feel well, just tired. And then I'm going to say my late 30s, diagnosed with Hashimoto's. So I'm back in the endocrinologist and I'm like, why was it Graves' disease 12 years ago and now it's Hashimoto's? Like they're the opposite. Right. And I don't understand that. And she said, well, that's just sort of what happens. And now I'm on medication for hypothyroidism, right? And this whole time my belly's not feeling good. Like I definitely feel bloated after I eat. Let me back up too. After the Lyme disease in that late 20s, early 30s timeframe, I did go to a doctor. He was from India and he was giving me intravenous like B vitamins and I did a lot of work with him. Now, again, this is 25 years ago at this point. And he said, I think you have food issues. I'm pointing out that I feel like his training from India was more holistic. He was a doctor, but he had this perception of the whole body that I wasn't getting from the endocrinologist and right? And so, but I'm going to him and I'm getting these IV like B12s and all of this stuff. And he says, I think you have, I can't remember whether he used the word allergy or sensitivity, but he said, I think you have issues with food. Let's say it that way. And I thought, no, I don't. Because I'm picturing, oh, I eat something, that means I break out, or I need an EpiPen, right?
Right.
I'm thinking, and I'm like, no, I don't have that. So he wanted me to do some testing. And I didn't want to spend any more money. I had spent a lot of money, like with him and with these IV injections and a lot of supplements. And I was like, I don't think so. So I'm kind of bummed about that because that was in my early 30s and that would have really saved me 20 more years and then probably the Hashimoto's wouldn't have happened, but I didn't do it. And I just kept eating what I wanted to eat. And just as a reminder, back in the 80s, if you were a runner and a fitness person, you pasta loaded, right? I would carb load, eat my, pasta after a run or the night before a big run, et cetera, or bagels in the morning. And then, after a run.
Right.
So I'm doing what I thought in the 80s was the healthy thing to do as a fitness wellness person and getting worse and worse and worse. So that's my kind of long story in terms of the milestones of each of that. And then I went back to school and became an integrative health coach. Because after that Hashimoto's and that response of, I don't know, that's why it just happens. I just was like, I'm not satisfied with that.
Right.
With a master's in exercise physiology, I had enough knowledge of the body to be like, and interest. It's always been my passion. So I want to find out more. So I went back to become an integrative health coach. And then I decided I really wanted to dive in to fatigue and autoimmune because that was me. And I went back to school again to become an FDN. And that's when I really started to understand at a much deeper level the connection between the gut, the food that I was eating, my gut, how that impacts my hormones, how my liver needs to be supported to help all of that process, and how to get my thyroid well. So I have not been on thyroid medication for a few years now. I don't take any. And and then just let me fast forward. So again, that kind of mindset of, let me not spend the money on testing. I learned about it, but I just did an elimination diet. Like I looked up an autoimmune and an elimination diet and I did that, but I didn't want to spend the money on the stool test and the food sensitivities, right? Because that same mindset of, I don't think I need to do that. So that cost me another few years because I did improve to a certain level. And I kind of, I didn't really feel as great as I wanted to feel. And I had pain in my hips. And people would say, well, Linda, now you're in your late 40s, early 50s, pain in your hips, you're getting older. And I'm like, I know plenty of ladies older than me who don't have that.
Right.
So when I finally did the testing, particularly the stool test, I had H. pylori, probably have had it for years and years. When I looked at the symptoms of H. pylori, I can relate it back. Those massive antibiotics. When I had Lyme disease in my 20s, I always had dogs. And with my dogs, I would be like, here's a lick for me of ice cream and here's a lick for you. And I would share it with my dog, So I'm like, because I also had a parasite. So I had H. pylori, I had a parasite. And I'm like, holy cow, why didn't I do this years ago? So now when I work with my clients, that's where we start because I know we need to figure that out and then we can build from there. Because so many people, are like, oh, I want to fix my adrenals. Well, we need to know why your adrenals are so stressed.
Right.
So
you got to start at the root.
Yes, that was a long story. Sorry, but
no, that's amazing. I think so many people can relate to that, and that I certainly can too. I went through a whole journey with ulcerative colitis myself. So let's kind of unpack the connection between the gut and how you can get fatigued, and then the gut and the thyroid stuff. So let's start with the fatigue. Like, how, if you have an imbalanced gut or you have infections like some of the ones that you did and some that you see with your clients in your practice, how can that ultimately translate to fatigue? Explain that a little bit.
Sure. Well, when you look at the microbiome, I picture it like a little community, a little world in there. And there's these families of bacteria. So it's sort of like the Smith family, the Jones, the Burkes, the Allens, and each family has their job. So like the Smiths, they repair everybody's houses, and the Joneses, they take care of the plumbing. And the number of family members is important, right? So do you have a good amount of different families who are active in the community? And do you have a lot of family members, right? So there's different species in each family. Because in our gut, each of the different species of bacteria have jobs like that to do. And so when you have bad players like H. pylori or a parasite, that disrupts the community. And vice versa, if you don't have a good number of good community players active and participating, because part of their job is to keep the bad guys in check and make sure they don't multiply. So when that's not happening, right, bad guys are not kept in check, the bad guys are taking over. Now different things in the body are disrupted, number one. So that's going to affect your hormones. It can affect your sleep. Just like, I mean, right there, you're going to be fatigued because you're not getting good, deep quality sleep.
Right.
Hormones are affected. And the reason it affects your sleep is because parasites are active during the night, number one.
Right.
Number two, your liver's trying to do double work to detoxify your body, but it's sending toxins to a gut that's not able to handle the toxins. So now it's coming back around. So the liver's like, holy cow, and your liver function is impaired. It's kind of like, you're too young to remember this, but I Love Lucy. She used to have, there was an episode, Lucy and Ethel, where they were on working the chocolate factory, right? They were on that chocolate line. And
yeah, I've seen that one.
Remember? That's how I picture the liver, like when this gut, you know, the liver's like, holy cow, you know, the chocolates are coming and they start shoving.
Can't keep up.
Right. So the liver's doing that with toxins, trying to handle it, and it's not getting it. The toxins are not leaving the body the way they're meant to. Mm. So it all comes back to that pathway and that, you know, excretion system of getting everything out. And when that's not happening, everything else gets affected.
Got it. Yeah. So it just goes back to that philosophy of the gut is the core of all of our health. And if it's, you know, infested with infections, which I think, you know, so many people in the US, you know, think that that's not a problem that we have here, right? But like parasites can be sitting on, you know, food. They can be on door handles, right? They can be in bathrooms, like they're everywhere. H. pylori is so common. I've had that too. Yeast is very common. Yeast overgrowth, like candida, like all of these things are so common. And you know, they just put such a burden and a stress on the body. So yeah, of course you're not, you know, sleeping or your adrenals are burning out or, you know, your endocrine system is struggling.
Exactly. Yep.
So when when you said that you were not only feeling fatigued, but then you were starting to gain weight, did you know that that was a thyroid thing, or did you go to your doctor and ultimately they told you it was?
Well, ultimately I had blood work and was told, so when I had the Graves' disease, which was, you know, late 20s, it was post the Lyme. And this is what happened. I finished my treatment for Lyme and I thought I'm going to get back in shape. Like I'm going to get healthy again. And I trained for a marathon. And I decided in a short amount of time, like I picked this marathon that was only like 4 months away. So I trained really fast. And as soon as I ran the marathon, I crashed. That was my Graves' disease. But I thought it was from training from the marathon. I'm like, oh, I overtrained, but I had muscle pain. I couldn't make it through the day, all this stuff. So finally, I went to the doctor and she did blood work and did diagnosed the Graves' disease. But I was super skinny then, right? Graves' disease, you lose weight. And which I also didn't correlate because I had trained for this marathon. So I thought I just got skinny. I was, then, 10 years later, it was before my kids. So it wasn't even related to the kids yet. Although then you justify, there's lots of reasons you can justify. You look at your life and you go, oh, well, this is happening or that's happening. That's why. But, yeah, I started to not be able to gain weight and I needed a nap every afternoon. But I was a personal trainer and I started at 5 a.m. So in the afternoon, I'm like, well, I need a nap because my day starts earlier than most people's. Like, again, justifying why I didn't really feel great
Mm-hmm.
and not very vital. But at some point, post children now, because I really crashed after my second child, I really, really crashed. By 10 a.m., I needed to lay down. I was pulling myself up the stairs. I would train clients because people knew I knew what I was doing, but I
Mm-hmm.
would just stand there and tell them and, just look tired. My
Mm-hmm.
energy was, not like a peppy trainer you want to go work with. I'd be, you know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
So I go to this doctor and she says, you just need to exercise more. Like, cause I'm like, I'm so tired. And she's like, you just need to try to exercise every day. I'm like, hold on, you don't understand. I'm a trainer.
Right.
Doing that for 15 years. Like, let me exercise more. Let me go. And now I can hardly walk. And,
Mm.
that was her response in terms of like, this is what you need to do. Cause she was like, you need to lose weight. I'm like, yeah, that's why I'm here,
Right. Right.
and with the blood work, then it came back, and she said there's antibodies. I'm like, well, what does that mean, antibodies? I hadn't gone to school for any of this yet.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm like, what do antibodies mean? She's like, well, your body's attacking your old thyroid gland. And I'm like, why? So then she didn't really have many answers, right? And then I went on. But so it was this weight loss, inability to lose weight, and fatigue. Listen, I went to graduate school at night. I can push myself, but this, I don't know if you have thyroid issues, but when you have thyroid, that kind, or any autoimmune like fatigue,
Mm-hmm.
there's no pushing through it, right?
No, not at all.
Right. And you make yourself wrong or I made myself wrong because I thought I should be able to push through it. I should be able to exercise. And so at some point there was a grace period of forgiving myself and having compassion for myself and learning and understanding that it wasn't about me not being good enough, that there were some real issues that I needed to unravel and figure
Mm-hmm.
out. So that was sort of my pathway. And then, as I said, I did lose weight, but I still didn't feel the way I wanted to until I really did the lab tests. And then I was like, oh, I have H. pylori. Okay, that's a biggie. Like I need to take that on. And I, as I said, probably like one of the things with H. pylori is you can have like bad breath. And I remember in my 20s being like, I have bad breath, or, my
Mm.
sister telling me or something like that. And so I really feel like H. pylori has been my resident for, many of those years.
Yeah. So interesting. All these little puzzle pieces that like once you're kind of like awakened and you know all of it, you're like, oh yeah, and then this, and then this, and then this, and it all just starts to make sense.
Mm-hmm.
And so it sounds like after you finally were able to do the lab test and you convinced yourself that that was the thing that you needed to do, that a lot of things really started to get better for you, right?
Yeah, because then I could take on the right choices and strategies rather than shooting in the wind and guessing. I mean, with the internet now, so great is information is so available, but that's also can be the downside because you see people go, oh, this is, this is the supplement that worked for me. This is the product that worked for me. And people just start trying, all kinds of things that they read about and they have no idea if that's the thing that they need, So, so yes, once I had that information, that was a game changer for me. And again, that's why I do it with my clients because, well, as an FDN, we're taught, we test, we don't guess, right? So the whole purpose is to use diagnostics to figure out what the problem is.
Right. And I find that it can be really dangerous to just be, guessing and shooting in the dark. And I definitely did that early on in my healing journey too, was like, yeah, reading other blogs, seeing what other Instagram people were posting about. And before I knew it, I had a cabinet of random supplements and random superfoods that I had no idea if they were helping me or not. And then
Right.
when I, finally started, doing this work and working with, I actually hired some FDNs early in my journey as well, to be able to do that advanced lab testing. And yeah, lo and behold, I had a bunch of food sensitivities to things that the other people were dubbing as totally healthy and great, even like blueberries and cucumbers and kale. I was massively sensitive to those and I had no idea,
Right.
So it's like, it's so hard to really take information online verbatim. I think it's a great start. Because even for me, like I remember when I started to kind of realize that like the conventional medicine approach to my ulcerative colitis was not working, and I started to do some of my own research, and I found that things like infections, like parasites and H. pylori could actually be a thing. And I remember bringing that information to my doctor, and he looked at me like I had 3 heads. He was like, "You don't have any of those. We don't need to test for that." And, little me was like, okay, what do I know, right? Google was wrong. But then, like, when I ultimately did the testing, I had on one lab test alone, I came back with a parasite, H. pylori, candida overgrowth, lots of bacteria overgrowth, like everything. And then just like you, when I finally started treating that stuff, that's when I finally got into remission and everything really turned around.
Exactly. Yep. I have a client right now who she's a mom with 2 young boys with thyroid issues. So she's probably in maybe she's 36 or 34, and fatigue and, thyroid and all that. And she's done great. Like, she has been so committed to every single thing we've worked with, no matter how hard it was to change her food. And she excitedly went for her regular endocrine appointment and brought her results and her lab test to the doctor. And the doctor was actually annoyed that she tried another route, and sort of chastised her. That's how she said, "I felt like I did something wrong." And to me, that's just more about the doctor's ego, I think, a little bit.
Right.
But instead of saying, "Wow, you're feeling better, this is making a difference for you," even if it's not the thing that I'm trained in or know about, good for you. But oftentimes the doctors are like, "Don't be silly. Food has nothing to do with thyroid," or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's unfortunate because I think like as a health community, we need to be working together because the disease epidemic today is really serious and it's not going to get better if there isn't some level of collaboration. And I truly believe, like, I don't think conventional medicine is bad. I think there's so many great things about it, but I also think that we can't be, like you said, chastising each other. And that's just not a healthy way to approach it because our health is so complex and there's so many different factors to it. And I think if there can be a level of understanding and coming togetherness with everything, then I think we're going to see massive progress with people's health.
I agree. And I also think, COVID right now really makes that glaringly obvious or at the front of the conversation in my mind, because it's, the whole conversation of, is it the landscape, the terrain, or is it the microbe, the germ, right? That's that conversation. So, if you understand that the terrain, which is your human body, if you make it be as strong as it can be and you're giving it all the nutrients and you're keeping it clear of things, then when a germ like COVID-19 shows up, you have a much better opportunity to handle it quickly. Things aren't going to get spread. But when we have massive across the country, just chronic illness, like we're just not in good health generally, I think as a culture, then we're just that much more vulnerable to these things that show up. But,
Right.
Which is the bigger factor?
Yeah, and it's a really good debate. So, because you've gone down this journey yourself and that's what you work with so many of your clients on, what are a couple of tips or like words of wisdom that you have for people who are watching, who are maybe resonating? They're like, hey, this is me. Like, where do I get started? Or what are some things that I could potentially do now? What advice would you have?
I think first, just to, coming from my own journey, is again to have some grace and compassion for yourself. I think women who are moms, or even if you're not a mom, women in general, we're really hard on ourselves. There's an expectancy in our culture to have everything handled and to be perfect. And when you try a diet and your body doesn't respond, or you're working really hard on changing your foods or whatever, and your body doesn't respond, you don't lose weight or you don't feel better, we make it be, or I made it be, about me and my failure, or why am I, not getting the results that I want. So I would say, number one, start with grace and compassion for yourself and who you are. Number two, understand God made us as really perfect human, like really good machines. He knew what he was doing. We're the ones messing it up. But there's, you know, he didn't start with you. God didn't make, let me say it that way. God didn't make any mistakes. He didn't start with you, which means, what I mean by that is, it's not like there's something wrong with your body. It means that the tools and the strategies you've been using to so far have gotten you the results of where you're at. And therefore, if you're not happy with those results, you need to find different strategies to get a different result, and they are available. So just keep that in your mind, like, okay, this doesn't mean I'm broken. I have this diagnosis. Why do I have this body? It just means you need to do something differently to shift that. So those would be the 2 tips off the top of my head, I think, that really set your mindset. And when your mindset comes from that place, anything is possible.
Oh my gosh, I love that. I just got goosebumps when you're saying that. It's so true, because it's like the healing journey is such a mental and emotional game too, just as much as it is physical. And you know, I'm sure for you, being a personal trainer and going through the weight gain and fatigue was very hard, you know, and taxing emotionally and mentally for you. And so I've no doubt that you've really gone down that path and really examined those things for yourself personally. And that's probably a huge gift that you give your clients, honestly, to be able to help them to see those things and to heal them in ways that they may not otherwise. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, you're welcome. I hope so. I spent a lot of time feeling like a fraud in my body and a fraud in my professional life. And I actually had this conversation with my sister after that Hashimoto's diagnosis, where I said, I need to figure this out, or I need another job. Like what I'm trained to do and what I've been doing for 25 years, I'm going to have to stop and find something completely different, because who's going to hire a fat, tired personal trainer? You know, like I got to figure this out. Yeah. So, but I felt like a fraud a lot.
Yeah, I can understand that. And I think you're definitely not alone. I think a lot of people in careers like that can feel like that. So, you know, I'm sure people listening are going to want to kind of follow along with what else you're doing and sharing, because this is just such great information. So where can people find you online?
Sure. I have on Facebook, I have a business page. So I named my business Organic Health Journey, because it's been a 35-year journey.
Yeah.
Really a 55-year journey if you really look. But anyway, it's been a journey. And I feel like that organic, not only organic foods, but organic, going back to organically who we are as human beings and the connection between spirit, mind, and body. That's like an organic approach. So business is Organic Health Journey. So there's a Facebook page with that. And then on Instagram, it's at Organic Health Journey on Instagram. And then, you know, I have my personal page on Facebook, which I do a lot of my stuff anyway, but it's Linda Downey. And then I have a private group in Facebook, which is Fatigue, Thyroid, and Autoimmune Recovery. And there's a few thousand people in that group, and I do a lot of training in there, and I've got clients that hang out in there. So that might be a nice place for people to, it's a private group you have to ask to be in.
Amazing. That sounds great. And do you have anything that you want to offer to listeners today?
Well, yeah, I mean, if it speaks to you to like get a stool test, like if you're finally convinced, which it took me 30 years to convince myself, I had to go through, and you know, a lot of it was like that scarcity mentality of, oh, I don't want to spend any more money, you know, or, oh, I can figure this out on my own, which is really just a fear mentality, right? Of not stepping out and saying, let me go do what I need to do. You know what I mean? So and that might be common. So if you don't want to waste the time that I did and really find out, I'm doing stool testing this month, and it's 20% off what the normal price is. So even if, you know, we're not working together as a client and a practitioner, or you're not doing all the testing, that I think is the place to start. And someone can get that test done at a discounted price right now, and at least have that information.
Beautiful.
And that includes a consult. Like I would order the lab test, and I would definitely spend like an hour when that test comes back going over it and giving my recommendations, which then people can choose to do what they want.
Amazing. Thank you so much for that. Awesome. Well, you guys definitely check out Linda's Facebook group, follow her on Instagram, do all the things, get in touch with her if you want to follow up with her. And especially if her story is resonating or anything that she shared today is resonating and you want to dive deeper, highly recommend getting in touch with her and doing this work. I mean, it's changed my life to do this level of work too. And it's obviously changed hers and all of her clients. So can't wait for all of that. So thank you, Linda, so much for being on and for sharing everything and sharing your story and for really recognizing that your journey ultimately is such a gift to other people and for getting into this career path to help others with that.
Thank you for having me. I think that each of us have a story, and that's kind of what this life is supposed to be about. When we share the stories and we make a difference with each other, then life's good.
It is. Awesome. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you, Kristen.